Good morning, everyone. So, our topic for today is all about lateralization, language, and intelligence. So, to start with, I will be discussing about lateralization. So, without further ado, let's jump into the video.
We used to think of brains as symmetrical functioning in the same way on the left and the right sides. But we now know that this is not so. So, from the small brains of insects, the variously size of brains of vertebrates including the humans, the left and right sides processes informations differently and it control different patterns of our behaviors. This is known as lateralization. Lateralized brain can carry out different functions simultaneously on the left and right sides. Example is when monitoring for predators while searching for food. Avoiding duplication in this way may increase the cognitive capacity.
This topic considers the cognitive advantages of two kinds of lateralization. So, the first is known as individual lateralization, which means that most of us individuals in a species are lateralized roughly half in one direction and the other half in the other direction. So the second type of lateralization is known as directional or population lateralization, which means that most of us individuals have the same direction of lateralization. Directional lateralization is important for our social behavior, but as this report, it may not increase cognitive capacity or any more than thus individual lateralization. Strength of lateralization is discussed, and so is the communication between the left and right sides of our brain. So what does lateralization really means? So lateralization in the context of the neuroscience and psychology, it refers to the phenomenon where specific cognitive functions and sensory processes are primarily localized or specialized in one hemisphere. It's either the left or right of the human brain, which means that it has certain tasks, skills, or abilities that are predominantly associated with one side of the brain over the other.
In line with the lateralization, hemispheric lateralization is also known as cerebral lateralization. It refers to the specialization of function in the two hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. The two hemispheres of the brain are not identical in terms of their functions and abilities. Instead, they have specific roles and are responsible for different cognitive functions. The hemispheric lateralization is a concept wherein it describes the specialization of functions in the two hemispheres of the brain, wherein it provides valuable insights into the complexity of brain function and how different tasks and cognitive processes are distributed within the brain. However, it is important to remember that individual differences and neuroplasticity plays significant roles in the functioning of the brain. The brain is a highly complex organ that plays an essential role not just in thinking but in all body functions. It is divided into two halves, which are the right and the left brain. Specific areas are responsible for different functions, but the brain works as a whole. So the question is, how does brain function? So the human brain is an integrate organ which it has approximately 3 pounds and it contains about 100 billions of neurons and 100 trillions of connections. Your brain is the command center for all that you think, feel, and do. Your brain divides into two halves or hemispheres. Within each half, particular regions manages certain functions. The two sides of your brain look very much alike, but there is a huge difference in how they process information. Despite their contrasting styles, the two halves of your brain don't work independently of each other. So the nerve fibers connect different parts of our brain. If a brain injury severs the connection between sides, you might still function typically, but the lack of integration would cause some impairment. The human brain constantly reorganizes itself. It's adaptable to change, whether it's physical or through life experiences. It is tailor-made for learning. The left hemisphere, it refers to one of the two hemispheres of the human brain, wherein it is connected to the right side of the body, and it is responsible for controlling various functions, including the language processing, logical reasoning, and analytical thinking in most right-handed individuals and many left-handed individuals. The left hemisphere is very dominant for language, and it is often associated with functions such as speech production and comprehension. The left hemisphere of the brain is one of the two major divisions of the cerebral cortex, the outermost layer of the brain. It is known for its specialization in several key functions, particularly in most right-handed individuals and many left-handed individuals. The functions of the left hemisphere. Number one is the language processing. The left hemisphere is often dominant for its language functions, wherein it plays a crucial role in speech production and comprehension. It is responsible for generating spoken and written language as well as understanding language when we hear or read it. Second is the analytical and logical thinking. This hemisphere is associated with analytical thinking, logical reasoning, and problem solving, wherein it helps us analyze information, make sense of data, and draw conclusions based on facts and evidence. Third is mathematical and numerical abilities. Mathematical skills and numerical processing are typically functions of the left hemisphere, wherein it allows us to perform calculations, work with numbers, and solve mathematical problems.
So fourth is the sequential processing. The left hemisphere is good at processing information in a sequential and organized manner. This is essential for tasks like following a step-by-step instructions and understanding the order of the events. And lastly is the fine motor skills. It is also involved in controlling fine motor skills, particularly in the right side of the body. This includes activities like handwriting, precise hand movements, and other fine motor tasks.
So next is the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is one of the two major parts of the human brain, and it specializes in a different set of cognitive functions compared to the left hemisphere, wherein it excels in tasks that involve spatial awareness, creativity, recognizing emotions, and processing non-verbal cues, wherein it helps us perceive the world in terms of space and relationships, aiding in tasks like understanding maps, recognizing faces, and appreciating art. The right hemisphere is often associated with our ability to grasp the emotional content of social interaction, as it plays a significant role in recognizing emotions in others, allowing us to connect on our emotional level. The functions of the right hemisphere. So number one is the spatial awareness. The right hemisphere is crucial for our understanding of spatial relationships. It helps us perceive and navigate through the physical world, wherein it recognizes patterns and interpret spatial information. So second is the creativity and imagination. This hemisphere is often associated with creativity, artistic abilities, and imaginations. It plays a role in creative thinking, artistic expression, and the ability to see the big picture. Third is the emotional processing. The right hemisphere is involved in recognizing and expressing emotions. It helps us interpret non-verbal cues such as facial expression, and body language, which are essential for understanding the emotions of others. So fourth is intuition. It is believed to be involved in intuitive thinking and gut feelings. It can help us make quick judgments and decisions based on a limited information. So fifth is the music and rhythm. Musical abilities such as recognizing melodies, rhythms, and understanding musical patterns are often associated with the right hemisphere. And lastly is the holistic processing. Unlike the left hemisphere's analytical approach, the right hemisphere tends to process information in a more holistic manner, focusing on the overall context and the interconnectedness of an element. It's important to note that the left and right hemisphere of the brain have their specialized functions. They work together and communicate through a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. Additionally, the degree of specialization in the right hemisphere can vary among individuals, and some people may have a more balanced distribution of functions between the two hemispheres. So before I end this video or this topic, I just want to summarize all the information about the lateralization. So overall, lateralization has been explored through research on a split brain patients, and it provides insight into the adaptability of the brain, the influence of the handedness, and potential gender differences. Understanding hemispheric lateralization is critical in the study of brain function, cognitive disorders, and how the brain processes various tasks and information. It highlights the remarkable complexity and versatility of the human brain, where both hemispheres work in concert to support our diverse cognitive abilities and our behaviors.
Present day to all, everyone. My topic is all about language that is represented by the letters. Yeah. So, language is one of the most complex human abilities. Ito na yung, or it acknowledges the significance of language as a unique and highly developed human skill. Language allows us to convey thoughts and emotions through a system of communication that involves words, grammar, and semantics. It encompasses both spoken and written forms of expression processed in the left hemisphere of the brain. So, ang human brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right. So, it suggests that the brain isn't symmetric in how it processes language, but instead it emphasizes a significant portion of language processing occurs in the left hemisphere, meaning that left side ng brain is primarily responsible for understanding and producing language. So may mga phenomenon din ang lateralization. Lateralization is the term used to describe the specialization of functions in one of the hemisphere of the brain over the other. So in context yun, ang language, it means that the left hemisphere has evolved to be the primary location for language processing, while both hemispheres are involved in various cognitive functions. Sa lateralization suggests na the specific tasks such as language are primarily localized in one hemisphere in this hemisphere. So let's discuss the language processing in the left hemisphere. So sa language processing in the left is typically, ito na yung responsable siya sa language. So ang human brain niya is divided into hemispheres, the left and the right. So um, in most people, regardless of handedness, left-handed or right-handed, ang left hemisphere is plays a central role in the process of language. Na, so this means that when we speak, listen, and read and write, the left hemisphere is the primary region involved in this task. So itong pattern nito is where language is localized in the left hemisphere is a general rule but not an absolute one. Some variability exists, and there are exceptions as seen in certain left-handed individuals and those with atypical brain structures. So in about 95% of right-handed individuals and majority of left-handed individuals, in approximately 95% of right-handed na mga tao, and in significant majority of left-handed na mga tao, ang language is processing the primarily concentrated in the left hemisphere. So yung mga right-handed individuals tend to show a high degree of left hemisphere dominance for language. So this lateralization ensures efficient communication and cognitive functions. So specialization of language processing is ang left hemisphere is thought na it enhances the efficiency and coordination of various language-related functions. When yung language functions are localized to one hemisphere and it allows for more streamlined communication, faster processing of information, and effective cognitive functions related to language. So, naniniwala din ito sa lateralization is advantage ito because it allows for a dedicated area of the brain to handle the complex tasks of language production, comprehension, and analysis. So, yung specialization contributes to our ability to communicate effectively and efficiently with one another. So, So, sa key language daw is meron tayong dalawang area sa lateralization. Ito yung Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. So, ito sa picture, kita nyo kung saan banda sila nakalocate sa ating brain. So, sa Broca's area, this is a specific region of the brain located in the frontal lobe, typically in the left hemisphere. It's named after the French neuroscientist Paul Broca, who discovered its importance in the language production. Plays a critical role in the production of speech and language. Broca's area is primarily responsible for the motor aspects of speech and languages. It is involved in the planning and coordination of the muscle used in speech enabling the production of grammatically correct and coherent sentences. So damages to this area can result in non-fluent aphasia. Non-fluent aphasia is a language disorder characterized by difficulty in forming grammatically correct sentences. Individuals with damage to Broca's area may struggle to articulate their thoughts fluently and may have trouble constructing sentences even though they understand the language itself. So, sa Wernicke's area, this brain region is located in the temporal lobe, typically in the left hemisphere. It is named after the German neurologist Karl Wernicke, who first identified its role in language. It is involved in language comprehension and processing of semantics. Wernicke's area is responsible for the comprehension of spoken and written language. It helps individuals understand the meaning of words and sentences, as well as the nuances and context of language. Damage here can lead to fluent aphasia din. Fluent aphasia is a language disorder in which speech remains grammatically and fluid but it lacks meaningful content. Individuals with damage to Wernicke's area may speak in long grammatically correct sentences that don't make sense, so they may use real words but the words are often strung together incoherently. In summary, Broca's area is vital for the production of language, ensuring that we can construct grammatically correct sentences while damage to this area can result in non-fluent aphasia. Wernicke's area, on the other hand, is crucial for language comprehension and semantics, and damage here can lead to fluent aphasia, where speech remains grammatical but lacks meaning. These two areas, along with other brain regions, work together to enable effective communication and language use. So, lateralization of language development, language refers to the process by which specific language functions became more localized in one hemisphere. One of the brain predominantly the left hemisphere in the early stage of life, language functions are less specialized and more integrated across both hemispheres. So language lateralization is a developmental process that occurs over an individual's lifespan, particularly during childhood. It doesn't happen overnight but involves as the brain matures and language skills are acquired. So infants showing bilateral activations of language areas in the very early stages of language development, such as during infancy, it's common to observe bilateral activation of language areas in the brain. So this means that both the left and right hemispheres are involved in the processing language. Our infants are exposed to and begin to understand language from various sources and their brains are in the process of organizing its functions. To gradually shift that dominance as they acquire language skills as children grow and gain exposure to language. So their brains became more specialized for language processing. The left hemisphere became increasingly dominant in this role. So the shift towards left hemisphere dominance is a natural part of language development. So a typical lateralization in the left-handed individuals, not all individuals exhibit a typical left hemisphere dominance for language, while the majority of the right-handed individuals and a significant portion of the population exhibit a clear left hemisphere dominance for language processing. Though itong pattern does not hold true for everyone. In some left-handed individuals, language functions may be more evenly distributed across the left-handed individuals are those who primarily use their left hand for tasks. In some left-handed individuals, language processing is less strictly lateralized to the left hemisphere. Instead, they may demonstrate a more balanced distribution of language functions between both hemispheres. So this typical lateralization is an interesting example of brain diversity. Typical lateralization in left-handed individuals is a fascinating example of the brain's adaptivity and diversity. So it demonstrates that the organization of language in the brain is not fixed and there can be significant individual variation. The reasons for a typical lateralization in left-handed be understood, but it suggests that factors such as genetic, environmental influences, and individual arrangements in brain structure can all play a role in shaping how the brain processes language. So this diversity in language categorization is a reminder of complexity of human beings and the need to consider individual differences in studying cognitive functions. So it challenges the notion of the left hemisphere exclusive seat of language processing and highlights the brain's ability to adapt and find alternative pathways for language. Summary language is predominant process in the left hemisphere of the brain with locus and Wernicke's area playing crucial role in the language production and comprehension. The development of lateralism is a dynamic process and in some cases such as left-handed individuals. It can deviate from the norm and highlighting the brain's remarkable adaptability and complexity in the run of language. And that's all. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's watching this video. So today, in this video presentation, we will talk about the hemispheric lateralization. With hemispheric lateralization is pretty interesting that the two halves of our brain, the left half and the right half of our brain, are actually responsible for different functions. So it says that although the two cerebral hemispheric share many functions, each hemispheric have also performed unique functions. Hemispheric lateralization, also known as cerebral lateralization, refers to the specialization of function in the two hemispheric of the brain, the left hemispheric and the right hemisphere. The two hemispheres of the brain are not identical in terms of their functions and abilities. Instead of they have specific roles and are responsible for different cognitive functions. So here it says that our left hemisphere is going to control our right side of our body, and it also to controls things like spoken and written language. It's also responsible for numerical and scientific skills. So if you're very analytical and very scientific oriented or very math oriented, or if you are very language oriented, you could be lefty arm. So because lefty hemisphere is more dominant. In the other hand, the right head hemisphere controls the left side of our brain or our body, and it's going more involved in creativity. So it says musical and artistic awareness, space pattern, perceptions, insight, imaginations, generating mental image. When I say like picture a black cube with a fire coming out, so you can picture that as your right brain. And this also responsible for sound, touch, taste, and smell. So if you're very artistic, very into musical, if you love looking, if you are good at imagination, that is more right-brained. So here I've got a little diagram here that kind of shows this broken up more breakdown visually. So the left brain functions, we have analytic thought, logic, language, and reasoning, science and math, written, number skills, and right hand control. So in the right brain functions, we have art awareness, creativity, imaginations, intuitions, holistic thought, music awareness, and 3D forms, left hand control. So now, what kind of interesting specializations of one hemisphere or the other is more pronounced in men? So men are either really lefty brain or tend to really right brain. The balance is not common in men as in women. So yeah, that's how it works. Females generally have larger connection between both sides. So you're more on balance ang females kaysa men's. So many more women are not really either highly left or highly right brain. But hindi ibig sabihin yun ay hindi nila kaya. So hindi lang common sa females ang pagiging hindi balance. Another interesting thing about this is that you can think about what you are, or you're really left-brained or you are really right-brained. And so if you are left-brained, you are really good at science and that kind of thing, math. And if you are a right-brained, you are going to be really good at arts and music awareness. So women, because they're more balanced, you might be good at a variety of different things. So lahat ng kaya ng isang left-brained or right-brained ng isang tao ay more likely kayang gawin ng isang babae. I can think about myself. I really feel like I'm balanced because I'm really into music. I really love arts at this age. I like music things like that, and I'm really into science things. I do scientific skills, so I feel like that I'm pretty balanced. Even though I'm a man, though I'm not good in a specific things, but I'm mediocre at everything. So that kind how I work. So interestingly, it says damage to the left side of our brain can cause the alpacia. What is alpacia? Just kind of a lack of understanding written or spoken languages, or knowing what you want to say but you can't say it. That's alpacia. Damage to the area on the right side, because this is our emotional awareness side. So this can lead to speech with little emotional inflections. So para kang nagsasalitang AI sa internet, kagaya ni Alexa or Siri. Ganon. So parang hi, hello, ganyan, para kang robot, ganon. Ganon yung ibig sabihin ng emotional inflection. So this will be the end of our video presentation about hemispheric lateralization. So I hope you learned more about my presentation, and thank you for watching.
Good day everyone, I am Sahla K. Mama, and now I am going to discuss about psychological perspectives. Objectives: explain the psychological relevance of these concepts in fields like cognitive psychology, neuropsychology, and clinical psychology. Second, describe how they relate to assessment, such as IQ test and language evaluation. Cognitive psychology is the scientific study of mental process. This includes trying to understand how people store and recall memories and acquired and used language. So, in broad definition, cognitive psychology is empirical investigation of mental events and knowledge involving how people recognizing an object, remembering a name, having an idea of something, understanding a sentence, and solving a problem. While in specific definition, it is empirical investigation of mental processes and activities used in perceiving, remembering things, thinking, and act of using those processes. Some examples of cognitive psychology are how people perceive various shapes, why they remember some facts and forget others, and last but not the least, how people learn language. We have some famous concepts of cognitive psychology. They are cognitive schema, bystander effect, the priming effect, framing bias, and locus of control. In psychology, a schema is a cognitive framework or concept that helps organize and interpret information. So simply put, a schema describes pattern of thinking and behavior that people use to interpret the world. Bystander effect. The bystander effect, also known as bystander apathy, refers to a phenomenon in which the greater the number of people there are present, the less likely people are to help a person in distress. So if you witness an emergency happening right before your eyes, you would certainly take some sort of action to help the person in trouble, right? While we might all like to believe that this is true, psychologists suggest that whether or not you might intervene might depend upon the number of other witnesses present. The priming effect. It is the idea that exposure to one stimulus may influence a response to a subsequent stimulus without conscious guidance or intention. So the priming effect refers to the positive or negative effect of a rapidly presented stimulus on the processing of a second stimulus that appears shortly after. Framing bias occurs when people make a decision based on the way the information is presented, as opposed to just on the facts themselves. So the same facts presented in two different ways can lead to people making different judgments or decisions. Locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces beyond their influence, have control over the outcome of events in their lives. The concept was developed by Julian B. Rother in 1954 and has since become an aspect of personality psychology. So the psychological relevance of cognitive psychology is to help us to understand ourselves and others, learn more effectively, change unwanted behaviors, and help in managing some mood disorders. Neuropsychology is the branch of science that studies the psychological processes of nervous system and relates them to behavior and cognition. Neuropsychology aims to understanding the relationship between the brain, on the other hand, and the mind, and behavioral control, on the other. Although humankind has always been interested in this issue, the science of neuropsychology is relatively young. Its traditional approach was the study of the associations between focal brain lesion and psychological defects. But today, neuropsychology is in possession of refined methodologies and theoretical frameworks for understanding both how the mind and brain works. A psychologist is a trained mental health professional who helps people learn healthy ways to handle mental health changes. They can help people living with specific conditions like depression or anxiety, or those who are going through a tough time in life, like grieving the loss of a loved. So the roles of neuropsychologists are help neurologists or other physicians to establish or rule out a particular diagnosis, make prediction regarding the prognosis for recovery, and intervention and rehabilitation. So what do neuropsychologists do? Neuropsychologists, understanding the relationship between brain disorders and mental health conditions, may lead to more accurate diagnosis and treatment options for patients, which is one of the goals of neuropsychology. This specialty aims to understand how the brain and behavior are connected. So the main role of a neuropsychologist in mental health is to firstly characterize the degree and pattern of cognitive impairment, as well as to provide an indication of how the deficits might impact on functioning. Clinical psychology is the branch of psychology concerned with assessing and treating mental illness, abnormal behavior, and psychiatric problems. Clinical psychology specialty integrates the science of psychology with treating complex human problems. In addition to treating individuals, clinical psychology also focuses on couples, families, and friends or groups. Clinical psychology relates to psychologists directly providing comprehensive health care to patients who are suffering from mental illness. Clinical psychologists interact with patients through observations, interviews, and tests before making a diagnosis and coming up with a plan to deal with the symptoms of a mental illness. Many psychologists in this field use psychoanalysis, a psychological theory and form of therapy for treating mental disorders in patients. Clinical psychologists classifying their basic activities under three main headings: assessment, including diagnosis, treatment, and research. In assessment, clinical psychologists administer and interpret psychological tests, either for the purpose of evaluating individuals' relative intelligence or other capabilities, or for the purpose of eliciting mental characteristics that will aid in diagnosing a particular mental disorders. The interview, in which the psychologist observes, questions, and interacts with a patient, is another tool of diagnosis. For purposes of treatment, the clinical psychologist may use any of several types of psychotherapy. Many clinical psychologists take an electric approach, drawing on a combination of techniques suited to the client. Clinical psychologists may specialize in behavior therapy, group therapy, family therapy, or psychoanalysis, among others. Research is an important field for some clinical psychologists because of their training in experimental research and statistical procedures. Clinical psychologists are thus often crucial participants in studies relating to mental health care. History of clinical psychology. Early influences on the field of clinical psychology include the work of the Austrian psychologist Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was one of the first to focus on the idea that mental illness was something that could be treated by talking with the patient. And it was the development of his talk therapy approach that is often cited as the earliest scientific use of clinical psychology. So the psychological relevance of clinical psychology in the field is that the specialty of clinical psychology addresses behavioral and mental health issues faced by individuals across the lifespan, including adjustment issues and traumatic stress reactions, emotional and psychological problems, including serious mental illness and crisis intervention. So that is the end of my report. Thank you for watching.
Good day everyone, this is Alea de la Cruz from BS Psychology 2A, and I am the reporter of the developmental aspect of lateralization. So, When we say lateralization, refers to the specialization of function in the two hemispheres of our brain. Early development. The brain shows a high degree of plasticity, allowing the function to be more evenly distributed between. However, as we age, lateralization becomes more pronounced. For example, language function become predominantly localized in the left hemisphere. For most right-handed individuals, this specialization allows for more efficient of language-related tasks. Overall, the brain gradually becomes more lateralized as it matures. So, language development, refers to a complex process that evolves from infancy to adulthood. So, babies start by making cawing sounds, which is eventually progress to babbling and eventually to meaningful words and sentences. Language acquisition occurs through a combination of innate abilities and environmental factors such as exposure to language models and social interaction, vocabulary, and enhance grammar and syntax. During adolescence, language development become more sophisticated for high-order thinking, abstract reasoning, and the ability to communicate complex ideas. Next one is abilities or a cognitive abilities, including memory, attention, reasoning, and problem solving. Also undergo change over the lifespan. In early childhood, cognitive abilities undergo rapid development, allowing children to learn and acquire new skills quickly. So, sa adolescence naman, ang cognitive abilities nila is to continue and to improve, promoting more advanced thinking skills, abstract reasoning, and greater self-awareness. However, cognitive abilities may show some decline in later adulthood. This decline can be attributed to factors such as age-related change in brain structure and function, decreased processing speed, and to accumulation of cognitive load from years of experience. Despite these declines, older adults often comprehensive by relying on their accumulated knowledge and experience. It is important to note that individual experience, genetic factors, and environmental influence can all impact the trajectory, lateralization, language development, and cognitive abilities. Throughout the lifespan, different individuals may exhibit unique patterns of development and change in these domains. Next naman is I'm going to highlight the role of genetic and environment in development. So, genetic plays as a significant role in the development of lateralization. Language and cognitive abilities research has shown that some aspects of the brain lateralization have a genetic basis, as certain genes are in development and functioning of language-related areas in the brain. Similarly, genes plays a role in language acquisition and cognitive development, such as rate of language acquisition and the potential for intellectual potential. However, environmental factors also play a crucial role in language development. In heavily influenced by the child's exposure to language-rich environment, such as interaction and written language, cognitive abilities are similarly shaped by environmental factors, including access to educational interaction. Interaction between genetic and environment is often referred to as a gene-environment interaction or gene-environment correlation. This means that genetic predisposition may influence how individuals respond to certain environmental factors, and environmental experience can in turn modify the expression of genetic traits. In conclusion, lateralization, language development, and cognitive abilities change over the lifespan. While genetic contributes to the foundation of these processes, environmental factors also play a vital role in shaping their development. Understanding the interplay between genetic and environment is crucial for comprehending the complex nature of human development.